The play piece is very intrinsic to who we are as mammals. Like, it's incredibly important to us as like beings. Evolutionarily, it's a silly thing that the mice would lose track of what's going on around them because they're playing. But there's something really important in play for us as mammals. And so that's what kink is play.
Welcome to the Intimate Philosopher, where philosophy meets intimacy and life's biggest questions finally feel at home. I'm Dr. Emma Smith. I'm a licensed professional counselor, certified sex therapist, and existential philosophy nerd, inviting you to join me for an after-hours conversation. This is a space to slow down, pour a glass of wine, or maybe a cup of tea, and explore the messy, beautiful intersections of meaning, connection, desire, and being fully human. This is the place for real conversations about the parts of life that don't fit neatly into a box. So, grab your glass, get comfy, and let's dive in. Hi, friends, and welcome back to the Intimate Philosopher. I am so excited to introduce you to someone who is very special to me and is a dear friend and colleague. Today, we have Raven O'Rourke. You want to say hi?
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So let me brag on you for a little bit before we dive in. So Raven O'Rourke is a certified sex therapist and licensed clinical social worker at Between the Lakes Therapy in Tennessee, where she provides sex therapy to high-achieving professionals in the Nashville area and all throughout Tennessee, right?
Right.
Okay.
And Florida. So I got licensed. I don't have any Florida clients yet, but newly licensed in Florida.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We're expanding. That's
Yeah.
great. So prior to opening your private practice, you served for almost a decade as the social work team lead at Vanderbilt Comprehensive Care Clinic, one of the largest HIV clinics in the nation. I had no idea that was even here. And then you also earned your ASEC sex therapy certification in 2023 and your MSW and MPH from Tulane University in 2010 and 2011, respectively. There you go.
Sure.
So maybe respectfully too. Okay. Wow. You've been busy.
I was busy. Yeah. I'm a busy
Great.
girl.
So, I mean, how did you get into this work?
I was raised Catholic. And so being in the Bible Belt, I've learned that there's certainly a problem of the more conservative evangelical Christian, Jewish, whatever, like very conservative religions where they have sex negative stuff, which is its own problem. In my experience of the Catholic Church in the 90s and early 2000s, they just didn't talk about sex at all. Like, you're just supposed to figure it out. So I feel like I was curious about it, but not as like shamed as some of the clients that I see here. So, And so I went to college and got involved with peer health advocacy. I went to college a really long time ago, and consent was like new.
Yes.
Which sounds insane, but it was like a new thing, kind of. And so I was teaching my fellow students about consent, about negotiating, and I just loved it. I was already a psych major, and so I was just looking through, like, is sex therapy like a reasonable thing? And the ASEC conference in 2008, I think, was in New Orleans. And so I went as a student, which is where I was in school. And so I went as a student member, and I was like, oh, this is what I'm going to do. This is the thing.
Wow. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. So you figured it out early.
Early. However, it's very expensive to become a sex therapist. So I didn't get to the certification until much later. Working in HIV, which is what I did and have done for my whole career, there's obviously a sexual component to that. So I've been doing kind of sex and sex education, sex therapy all along.
That's incredible. I'm so glad that you brought up the Catholic in the 90s thing because I feel so much the exact same way that it was like, no, you just didn't talk about it. It was like, don't do it until you get married. And then that was it.
And abortion's like related, but not related to sex. Like somehow you just come about being pregnant and you must have the baby. But no talk about how you got to the pregnant part.
Yes, 100%. 100, absolutely. Oh my gosh. Okay. So, how did you start working with kink and BDSM?
I mean, I think it was part of what I was doing with people in the HIV world. And so a lot of what I was doing was people were presenting scenes with me, and HIV's changed over the time that I've been working in it. And I was like assessing for HIV transmission risk in like what you were presenting to me. But it was like really interesting to me from an academic perspective and less of like I think most people are interested in kink. People ask me questions all the time. Like, I was out with a friend last night and he was like, I have to talk to you about, and it's just like people are really interested in kink generally. And so I was interested, and then it just became like, oh, well, this doesn't gross me out. Like, I don't have to yuck your yum. Like, I don't have to do this, but like, let's look at this. So I think it just was interesting from a scientific perspective and interesting from more of like an objectivity, non-judgmental.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think one of the things that has been true for me, I'm teaching human sexuality, and I've been doing it for a couple of years at this point. And, we cover so many different topics. And in the beginning, we survey the students and we say, what are the things that you're most excited to learn about? And then what are the ones that you feel the most uncomfortable learning about? And kink is always, if it's not the top one, I think it's the second to the most popular one to say, "Oh, like, I'm not so sure about this," because everybody correlates it with abuse. And so, like, before we get too far into this
Mhm.
conversation, maybe we should just kind of myth bust that, like, right from the get-go. So
Yeah, kink is not abuse. The way that kink is supposed to be done is this like really beautiful framework. This is what's going to happen. Scenes should not be especially surprising to anybody involved in the scene. Like everybody knows what's going to happen. Everybody is consenting. There's a safe word. There's a framework around it, which clearly there's no framework around abuse. But like both parties are totally consenting. So you know that there's all these different consent models and people are always reinventing the wheel, but one of them is safe, sane, consensual, SSC. So safety to whatever degree, you've negotiated birth control, condom use. If you're going to tie someone up, have you had training on how to tie someone up? That can be a risky behavior. So safe, sane, which means you're grounded in reality, like you aren't in a psychotic episode, that you're not drunk or high, that you're in your body, and then consensual. Consent is like a whole semester course. But basically, everybody is saying yes to what they want to do, and everybody is saying no to what they don't want to do. And then if it's a maybe, there's limits to the maybe when it becomes a yes or a no.
yeah, that's amazing. Like, then thank you for breaking that down because I think that sometimes people I mean, and let's face it, like, most people are still getting their sex education through porn these
Mhm.
days, and so when you see a film or a scene, you aren't seeing the prep work
Yeah.
behind that, and you aren't seeing the aftercare that comes later, and so, when I used to be teaching the Marines and I was working with
That's so
them, yes,
funny.
I know. It's like, uh, "Who is this woman? Like, where did she come from? Because she doesn't belong here." And I'd be like, "I'm about to teach you about consent." And I would say, "There's no such thing as spontaneous kink."
That's right.
Like,
That's right.
right?
Yeah.
There is none. And the other one is it completely changed my model of consent that I taught them because we often talk about like, oh, you can do whatever, but just not these three things.
Yep.
Right. And I thought it was so interesting that when I went through my SAR, which is your sexual attitudes readjustment that all sex therapists have to go through,
Yep.
and maybe we can touch on how your experience was with that, because mine was transformative. One of the things I took away from it was the idea of inclusionary versus exclusionary consent, and that
Yes.
most people use exclusionary consent, saying, yeah, anything except this. But when you're with a new partner, maybe you use inclusionary consent, saying you can do these 5 things.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. And I love to do like I learned in surrogate partner training or relearned, I think I knew it before, of like the consent kind of practicing consent. So like feeling in your body, when you say no, what does that feel like? And like when you say yes, what does that feel like? Because if it is exclusionary consent and you just say you can do anything but these 5 things, it's like, oh, I can pour hot chocolate on your head, I can put a candy cane in your ear, like what, like you're like limitless if you're doing that with a new partner.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Do you want to explain what surrogate partner training is?
So that's great. So there's like a triadic model. So surrogate partners are people, so sex therapists are never touching clients. There's never any sex, never any nudity, never anything. But sometimes that's important to do in a therapeutic way. And so since we're not doing it, there are people who do surrogate partner work, which does include touch and potentially sexual activity, depending on what's going on with the client. But the client is still in our care, and we are coordinating with the surrogate partner to talk about what's come up. Like, have there been triggers? And we're kind of navigating the mental health piece while the surrogate partner, who's been trained, who's a professional also, is doing their job.
Yeah. We'll have to get one of the surrogate partners on the podcast because I think that's one that, I didn't even know that was a thing until I went through training. And yeah, isn't it funny? I think that, every once in a while I'll have somebody from like my past. I don't know if this happens to you too, because I'm from a small town. And they'll be like, "Oh, Emma's a sex therapist now." And I'm like, "It is so much more boring than you think it
I
is." It
know.
is very academic, like still a nerd, still not a hugger. Like
Yeah.
it's not.
Yeah, our friends, if we meet somebody new or maybe somebody's been drinking around us, we'll ask my partner, we'll be like, "That must be so exciting." And he's like, "Dude, she like if I have to hear about erection insufficiency one more time, like I will I will die." It's not as fun as you think it is.
It's so true. It's so true. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. So what are some other misconceptions? I feel like we're on a roll here.
I think there's this idea, the definition of kink is like always working. And so it's like, what is kink? Kink to one person is not kink to everybody. So it's like, and it's not ideal, but it's like a non-normative, but that changes over time. Like, sorry to give you something to look up, but I remember reading some research that in the baby boomer 60s, 70s coming of age, oral sex was way more serious than intercourse. And so like that maybe didn't happen until after you were super partnered or married even. Whereas now oral sex is like before intercourse on the bases or whatever. And so perhaps if I were to talk to somebody who came of age in that, then oral sex would be very kinky, which if I were to talk to a millennial or a Gen, what's after?
Z?
They would be like, no, that's not kink. So I think the definition of kink can be expansive. Um, and just understanding that like lots of people are involved in something that's kinky, right? Like if you've ever done like experimented with spanking, like a lot of people think that's kink. And
Mhm.
a lot of the people that I see even for like vanilla sex therapy have tried that. So I
Yeah.
think that's part of it is that kink is a lot of things. It doesn't have to be the scary 50 shades of gray, leather, tied up, showing bruises. It can be a lot of things. It can be role playing, which is, I think not atypical.
Sure. I mean, even wearing a costume or putting on a different persona,
Yeah,
right, can be kinky for folks. So, yeah, so you kind of have to define your
right.
own version. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
So
love
that's one thing. I think people are scared to bring it up. And so I'm all about like white lies and long-term relationships. So we can unpack that, I guess, if you want.
Yeah.
But I'll be like, why don't you just say like, I had a dream that you tied me up. Like, what do you think about that? And like tying up doesn't, and if your partner's like, whoa, then you just, oh, okay, it was a weird dream. But if it introduces some conversation, then that's great. Um, and there's lots of different products now that are safer. I don't know if we're doing brands, but like the sport sheet, they're like Velcro. Like, so nobody's going to be able to tie you up to the Velcro and like leave you for days. So it's not a scary, like, it's a nice introduction to,
Mhm.
and nobody's going to cut off your circulation and all of those kinds of things. There's a lot of introductory kink stuff on the market, which is really cool.
Oh my god. I love that you brought that up because, like, with sport sheets, first of all, they gave me the best sticker that I have on my
Yeah,
water bottle that says "Sex and Mischief," and I love it
I love
so
that.
much.
I love that.
But I love that, just having something, if people don't know what sport sheets are, there's things like sport sheets and like splash blankets, and they're just things that help protect your bedding, or there's certain types of bedding that, everybody thinks I'm going to talk about a golden shower when I talk about this. And like, yeah, you can, I guess it will
If you
hold
want
up,
to,
but it also doesn't, lube can stain. And these
especially the
tend,
good stuff.
right? What do you
Yeah.
think is the good stuff?
Like
What do you like?
silicone, like high quality silicone is gonna wreck your sheets and your walls and wherever else you decide to put it.
Yes, and so these sheets or these blankets, they don't stain. I don't know how they managed to do that, and why aren't we making every set of sheets out of that? But they are, and you can just kinda, like, throw them down, and it was really nice. I go to a sexual wellness symposium. Oh, you were there
Yeah.
last year too.
We go to the sex toy conference. Well,
Yes.
it's overstimulating. I don't know how you stayed there as long as you did. It's
I mean,
pretty.
I had to give floor tours as long as I can make it nerdy.
Yeah.
And I can feel like I'm doing a service, with my little floor tours
Yeah.
and walking people around to places. Yeah, that was an incredible experience to just see how much technology is going into sexual wellness, and shout out to all of the companies that are pouring into perimenopause and
All of them.
menopause. Oh my gosh, wasn't that amazing?
Yeah. Those like pleasure pod things were so cool. The
Yes.
lube for not for, I mean, I guess you could use them for sex, but just for people who are postmenopausal that have dryness. It's just like, oh, this is a great lubricator so that you're not itchy and uncomfortable all day.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't even know that people necessarily equate if you are, kind of what your baseline and your normal used to be, and suddenly you are like wildly uncomfortable
Yeah.
a lot
Yeah.
down there. Then, it could be one of the things is that when you start to have less vaginal estrogen, things dry out.
That's right. And
And
it's
so,
uncomfortable not just in sex, you know? It's like
no, it's
uncomfortable all day.
yes, welcome to being 43. And I can tell you firsthand, it is uncomfortable all the time.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah. So the pleasure pods or whatever those things are called.
Yeah, no, they were great. And the people who were making all of these different products, they were just so invested in the right reasons, right?
Oh,
Like
totally.
helping people feel embodied and experience pleasure, and really like, I think busting down some of the stigma around that too. And so I have to say, none of what we just talked about, these are all things that we have either seen or talked to
Yeah.
the manufacturers or the creators of these products. No kickbacks. I mean,
None.
if they want to sponsor the show.
Yeah, you could talk to, please reach out. Intimate
Please reach
Philosopher Podcast.com.
Thank you so much. Okay, so let me bring you back
Okay.
to
Kink.
kink. And, this is my jam is my kink is tying everything into existentialism,
Yeah.
right? And this idea of how do we wrestle with our being? How do we find meaning and purpose? How do we navigate between isolation and connection? And where do you see kink in that conversation?
I mean, that is kink, right? So like kink is play. And I do actually have this citation, but I don't remember the things, but they somehow like took away part of the mice brain, and the play piece is like very intrinsic to who we are as mammals. Like it's incredibly important to us as like beings. Evolutionarily, it's a silly thing that the mice would lose track of what's going on around them because they're playing, but there's something really important in play for us as mammals. And so that's what kink is play. It's not sometimes a lot of times sex doesn't even necessarily part of it. It's all about play and like you said, dressing up and being a different persona. Like that's really important to who we are, to our beings. And then, kind of a subtype of kink, which a lot of people talk about BDSM, bondage, discipline, dominance. There's two: discipline, dominance, sadism, submission, and masochism. Did I get them all? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that when you're in that space of either being in the submissive or the bottom space, there's this space of your head because you're so present with what's going on because you're paying attention to what's going on in your body. You're paying attention to when you need to use the safe word. And you're just in this space. Your phone is not going off. You're not scrolling Instagram. You're not doing whatever. You're here. Be here now, kind of. And so, not to make it spiritual, but really it is to like be totally present with another person is relationship, is existence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that deeper level of connection,
Totally.
that's, I think it's so interesting to have you bring that up. And by the way, we can put all of the links and the citations in the show notes. You just scroll down. It'll be in my section lovingly called The Receipts, because I like to bring the
I like
receipts,
it.
right? So we'll put that there for you because that's really fascinating. And I think people have already heard me say, and it bears repeating, sex is play for adults. And there's this idea that children only play when they feel safe, right? And so when you think about having sex and being able to relax into experiencing something like orgasm, it does require a level of safety, and maybe security is the right word, like to say, hey, I've got you in this
Right.
experience, and I'm not saying that all kink leads to orgasm. Like, that can be part of it. It doesn't have to be part of it. But I think it's important to kind of point that out. So, what do you think is the most common type of kinky play?
Gosh.
Or what have you seen or heard of the most in your practice?
I see a lot of people who also see professional dominatrixes
Mm.
or doms, depending on the gender of the person. So I see a lot because I see high achievers. I see people who are like badasses and super professional and super efficient. And I think there's this desire to not be in control. Like,
Mhm.
can you just make all the decisions for me? There's this place that I go that I give talks to, and they like ask me ahead of time. They say, well, like, what's your seat that you prefer on the airplane? And like, what kind of food do you like? And then it's all taken care of for me. And it's just like, I would do this for free because I feel so taken care of and not having to make any decisions. And that's what I hear from people who are high achievers but have this desire to be dominated is like, I don't have to do anything. My whole life is making decisions for other people. And this hour, weekend, whatever, I don't have to do that. And that's,
Mhm.
being taken care of. And that's kind of, there are these archetypes that go with kink, and lots of people write Jungian, Freudian, all sorts of things. But that's one of the kind of archetypes of the submissive is like, I just want to be cared for.
Mhm. I love that. Yeah. I had a client recently, and they gave me permission to share this. And I had been working with them for years on something completely unrelated.
Yeah.
And then it finally came up that one of the relationships that we had been talking about was a partner who is their dominant and they are submissive. And this woman is somebody who has, overcome unbelievable hurdles in her life, from generational poverty to, other hardships that just kind of come with, I don't know, being alive in the world today. And it was really interesting because one of the things that she said when she was like, hey, you can tell your class this, or, you can tell your podcast listeners this. It's one of the ways that she allows herself to receive care.
Mm-hmm.
Right, because it is contained, because this is somebody, talk about a get shit done human, like
Yeah.
she's doing it. but in this container with this specific person in these specific ways, she can allow herself to be nurtured and cared for in ways that I think in other aspects of her life are probably just not part of the landscape. And I thought that was really interesting and just so generous of her to share her experience that way.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. There's just like a trust that goes with that, that if you're always getting shit done, can I cuss? Do I need to say
Yeah, nope,
GS?
you're fine.
Okay.
Oh, we're talking
Um,
about sex and everything. We are so
I just
explicit.
couldn't, I don't recall if you have the little E on yours.
I have so many E's on mine.
But this, yeah, this like ability to trust because like I don't trust. I mean, I'm self-employed and like self-employed. Like I'm the CEO and like the janitor, like nobody's coming in and cleaning my desk. So to be just taken care of is a desire that a lot of high achievers have.
Yeah, absolutely. This is one that I think with a lot of my couples, it throws them for a loop because sometimes, they have these very traditional kind of Christian relationships where the man is kind of the head of the household and is making a lot of the decisions. And then they come to sex therapy and he's like, well, I just wish that, she would. And I'm like, where else do you think that that is going to come from if not explicit? And, like, we actually have to negotiate this, and no, it's not gonna happen tonight after one conversation
That's right.
because we have 30 years of, you know, I think upbringing
Yeah.
and cultural norms and, are you somebody who criticizes her? Or, like, is that part of it? Is judgment part of your relationship? If how is that gonna interact? Because it's not like we don't step into Narnia when we go into the bedroom,
No. No,
right?
all of that comes with it. And I
Yeah.
think it happens a lot with like when somebody wants to introduce something new, they're like, well, what if I mess it up? And I'm like, then you laugh. Like, this is play. Like, I have a lot of heterosexual couples who will want to introduce pegging. And I'm like, her hips are not naturally moving that way. So, like, it's gonna get messed up. She's going to mess up. And like, no shame because her body's just not used to this kind of movement. And so, like,
Okay,
laugh.
tell us what pegging is.
Okay, I don't think gender actually matters, but it's when someone puts a strap on and uses the strap on in the anus of the receptive partner.
There you go.
So the context I was using was a woman would put on a strap on to use it with a man.
Mhm.
But that's a weird like that's not the natural movement of a cisgender woman in sex. So she's going to mess it up. This is like not, this is kind of hard.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's like a whole, there's a whole progress that has to happen with that, right? Like,
Yeah.
so there's going to be conversation. There's going to be, don't save this for your one date night that you manage to schedule
No,
every third month,
that's right. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
If you're going to introduce kink, making it experimental and like low stakes, maybe the first, what, couple times?
For sure, for sure. And, like, if this is, like, some big fantasy, then, like, both partners investing in it. If, for example, pegging is part of it, shout out to that symposium that we go to. There's the guy, the butt doctor guy, and he's very handsome, and he has, like, dilators. They're glass, I think? Anyway, he has, like, a whole protocol for making your anus ready for receptive intercourse of whatever kind.
Yeah, yeah, and they use glass because it's non-porous.
That's right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there we go. Okay. So, if you could leave our listeners with one little takeaway about kink that, they can go and tell their friends on their next girls' trip,
Yeah.
right, what would it be?
I think even if you're the most vanilla person, like you want to make out, you want to go through exactly the regular way that you always have sex, beautiful. I think there's something really important that we can take from kink in the consent framework and how to communicate about desire and what we want things to look like. I think it's especially important for anybody who has a little neurospicy. Like this creates a lot of safety for my clients, even if it's a vanilla sex, to be like, here's what's going to happen. Here are the ways that we're allowed and not allowed to engage with each other today. There's just a lot of safety, and we can learn a lot from the kink community about consent and how to set things up.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for that. We're going to have you back because I know that we're going to get more questions. So, if you have a question for Raven that you want her to come back on the show, because we're going to have her back, that's like going to happen, and you would like her to answer it, you can send it to me. I'll put the link in the show notes for you to send your questions, and it'll be like a little Google form. I think I finally figured out that's the best way to do it.
Okay.
Or you can go to the Instagram, which is the Intimate Philosopher podcast on Instagram, or Emma Smith PhD at on Instagram, and get it to me, and we will make sure that you get it. And then, Raven, we're going to put all of your stuff in there, but do you want to shout out any of your links or anything like that?
Sure. I mean, my website is betweenthelakestherapy.com. I have social medias. I try to post on there, but I'm mostly a scroller and not a poster. But I try to post at least once a month. And so that's also Between the Lakes Therapy on Facebook and Insta.
Okay. And so if you're a client in Tennessee or Florida, then and you're looking for someone to guide you through this, do you do consultations too?
Oh yeah, always a free consultation because we need to feel each other out, and make sure this is therapy, as you know. It's all about a relationship. And so it's not just like insert new human. And so you want to feel that out in a 20-minute conversation to see like, is this the right person for me or not?
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks for
Loved having
having
you
me.
on here. Yes, I loved having you on here. It was amazing. And we will see you soon.
Okay.
Wasn't she amazing? Now you know why I absolutely adore Raven O'Rourke so much. So, again, this is a topic that I wanted to bring to you because I think it is something that a lot of people are really curious about. I get asked about it a lot. Obviously, Raven does too, but it's not something that we talk about in a really accessible way yet. And so we want to make this comfortable. I want to give you good information from trusted sources. So, once again, thank you so much for tuning in. And please submit your questions because the more useful we can make this for you, the better. All right, listeners, I hope that you have a beautiful week ahead, and we'll see you soon. Thank you so much for joining me for this after hours conversation. If something in today's episode made you pause, get curious, or see yourself a little more clearly, share it with a friend and keep that conversation going. Until next time, keep exploring that messy, beautiful space between meaning and being human. I'll see you next time.